MSC Cruises is known today for enormous ships. Ships like MSC World America, World Europa, Seashore, Seascape, and Virtuosa are practically floating resorts with massive pools, water slides, specialty restaurants, entertainment venues, and enough activities to keep you busy for an entire week. But what if you don't actually want all of that? What if your ideal MSC cruise is less about riding every water slide, visiting 10 different restaurants, or exploring a ship the size of a small neighborhood, and more about relaxing, enjoying the ocean, and spending your days discovering new destinations? That's where the MSC Musica Class comes in. The Musica Class is older, smaller, and considerably simpler than MSC's newest ships. And yet, many experienced cruisers still appreciate these ships precisely because they don't try to do everything. So today, we're taking a closer look at the 4 ships in the Musica Class and why their biggest weakness may actually be their biggest strength. The MSC Musica Class consists of 4 ships: MSC Musica, launched in 2006, MSC Orchestra, launched in 2007, MSC Poesia, launched in 2008, and MSC Magnifica, which joined the fleet in 2010. The class represented an important step in MSC's evolution. These ships were larger and more sophisticated than the earlier Lyrica-class vessels, but they came before MSC's later explosion in ship size. MSC Musica itself was a major ship for MSC when it debuted. Today, however, these ships look relatively modest compared with MSC's newest vessels. For perspective, Cruise Critic lists MSC Orchestra at about 92,409 gross tons, with around 2,550 passengers at double occupancy. That might sound large, but compare that with MSC's newest generation, and you quickly realize just how different the experience can be. The Musica Class was designed around a more traditional cruise philosophy. You get restaurants, lounges, pools, a theater, casino, spa, fitness facilities, entertainment, children's facilities, and plenty of outdoor space. But you don't get the giant amusement park approach of the newest MSC ships. And that's the first thing you need to understand about this class. The Musica Class isn't trying to compete with world class on attractions. It's trying to offer a different kind of cruise. One of the biggest advantages of a smaller MSC ship is surprisingly simple. You don't have to work as hard to enjoy it. On a giant cruise ship, there's always something else: another restaurant, another bar, another activity, another deck, another attraction, another show, and that's great if you want maximum choice. But it can also make the ship feel overwhelming. The Musica Class is much easier to understand. You can walk around, learn the layout, and quickly know where your favorite places are. Cruise Critic describes Orchestra as a big ship by traditional standards, but notes that its port-intensive itineraries mean many passengers spend much of the day ashore before returning for dinner and relaxation. And that tells you something important about these ships. They're particularly well suited to cruises where the destinations are the main attraction. You're not necessarily booking Musica because you want to spend 7 days trying to experience every inch of the ship. You're booking it because you want a comfortable place to sleep, eat, relax, watch a show, and enjoy the sea between ports. That distinction becomes especially important in Europe. Imagine you're taking a 7-night Mediterranean cruise. You might visit Italy, France, Spain, Malta, Greece, or several of these destinations depending on the itinerary. On a port-intensive cruise, you could be getting off the ship almost every morning, and when you're spending 6, 8, or even 10 hours exploring a city, the ship doesn't necessarily need to be the biggest attraction in your vacation. This is where the Musica Class makes a lot of sense. You get the traditional cruise experience without paying or dealing with the sheer scale of a modern megaship. And this isn't just theory. Cruise Critic reviews of Musica Class ships repeatedly show that the itinerary is an important part of the appeal. One recent MSC Poesia reviewer, who sailed a 17-day transatlantic, described loving the cruise, while another longtime reviewer described Poesia as an elegant and beautiful ship. Meanwhile, a 2026 review of MSC Orchestra on Reddit described a 7-night sailing with 6 ports of call, with the itinerary being the best part of the trip. That's exactly the kind of cruise where a Musica Class ship can shine. The ship supports the vacation, it doesn't necessarily dominate it. Of course, there is a trade-off, and this is where you need to be realistic. If you've sailed MSC Seashore, Seascape, Virtuosa, World Europa, or World America, stepping onto a Musica Class ship can feel like stepping back in time. You won't find the same giant water parks. You won't find the massive indoor promenades of the Meraviglia and World classes. You won't have the same number of restaurants and entertainment venues, and you won't get the same collection of high-tech attractions. A recent 2026 Reddit review of MSC Poesia from a cruiser who had previously sailed 3 Meraviglia-class ships and MSC Seashore described Poesia as a smaller ship, but also said it was lovely and well-maintained after refurbishment. Another 2026 Poesia passenger noted that the cabin initially felt small compared with Seascape and World Class, although it became comfortable after unpacking. The same reviewer also described some entertainment as feeling more old school, and that's probably the best way to describe the Musica Class, old school. Not necessarily bad, just different. If you want cutting-edge attractions, these aren't the ships for you. But if you enjoy the traditional rhythm of cruising, that can actually be a positive. There's another criticism you'll hear frequently. These ships are old. And that's true. Musica entered service in 2006, Orchestra followed in 2007, Poesia in 2008, and Magnifica in 2010. So you shouldn't book one expecting the newest MSC interiors. Some cruisers notice the age. In a 2026 Reddit discussion about Orchestra, one passenger who had recently sailed the ship said that travelers coming from larger MSC ships would definitely notice the difference. Another reviewer said the ship was clearly older than MSC Seascape, although they had expected that and still considered the itinerary the highlight. But there's an important counterpoint. Age doesn't automatically mean neglected. MSC has been refurbishing and repositioning parts of the Musica Class. Poesia is the clearest example. MSC recently upgraded Poesia with a new yacht club, refreshed spa and gym facilities, and new specialty restaurants including Butcher's Cut and Kaito Sushi Bar. And MSC is taking that transformation even further. This is perhaps the most interesting development for the Musica Class. For years, if you wanted the full MSC Yacht Club experience, you generally looked toward the larger and newer ships. But that's changing. MSC Poesia now has its own yacht club, introduced in 2026. And MSC says Poesia's Yacht Club includes 63 suites, a private topsail lounge, dedicated restaurant, private sundeck, whirlpools, and 24-hour butler and concierge service. MSC Musica is scheduled to receive Yacht Club in November 2026, with 63 suites and its own private restaurant, lounge, sundeck, bar, grill, and whirlpool. Orchestra is also scheduled to receive the concept, and Magnifica is getting its own new yacht club as part of its 2026 transformation. That changes the equation, because suddenly, the Musica Class isn't simply older ship with fewer features. It can become smaller ship with a modern luxury enclave. That's potentially a very interesting combination. You can have the smaller, quieter environment of an older ship, while retreating into the yacht club when you want a more exclusive experience. But is smaller always better? Not necessarily. There are some situations where I'd strongly favor a newer MSC ship. If you're traveling with children who want water slides and lots of activities, the newer ships have a major advantage. If you love specialty dining and want lots of restaurant choices, go newer. If you want the ship itself to be your vacation destination, go bigger. And if you're traveling somewhere with cold weather, you should pay close attention to the ship's indoor facilities. This is an especially interesting issue for Alaska. Before MSC Poesia's Alaska debut, some cruisers questioned whether such an older, smaller ship would provide enough indoor space for scenic viewing. Those concerns are understandable, but MSC has now positioned Poesia specifically for Alaska, highlighting its high proportion of balcony cabins, Polar Code certification, refreshed facilities, and yacht club. So even here, the story is becoming more complicated. The Musica Class isn't simply being left behind. MSC is finding new ways to use these ships. So what about the 4 ships themselves? MSC Musica is the original. It's the ship that established the class and is now scheduled for a major new chapter with Yacht Club arriving in November 2026. MSC Orchestra is the second ship and has developed a reputation among some cruisers as a more traditional MSC experience, particularly for itinerary-heavy European cruises. MSC Poesia may currently be the most interesting ship to watch. It's been refurbished for MSC's Alaska program, received Yacht Club in April 2026, and now combines the older Musica design with several newer MSC features. And then there's MSC Magnifica. Magnifica has one feature that makes it especially interesting for people who don't want to sacrifice comfort in bad weather. MSC highlights its indoor pool, along with generous indoor and outdoor spaces. So even within the same class, there are meaningful differences. So, who is the Musica Class really for? I'd say it's ideal for 4 types of cruisers. First, destination-focused travelers who care more about ports than onboard attractions. Second, traditional cruisers who prefer lounges, dining, shows, and ocean views over amusement park-style attractions. Third, travelers who prefer smaller ships and don't want to spend their vacation navigating a massive floating resort. And finally, luxury-minded travelers who like the idea of yacht club but don't necessarily need a giant ship. But if your priority is the newest technology, biggest attractions, massive kids facilities, and endless dining options, the newer MSC classes will probably make you happier. So, is the MSC Musica Class outdated? In some ways, absolutely. But that's not necessarily the whole story. Its greatest advantage is also its biggest limitation. It doesn't try to be everything. It's smaller, it's simpler, it's more traditional, and for the right cruiser, that can actually make it a better MSC experience. But there's another huge factor that can completely change which MSC ship you should choose. Where are you cruising? Because MSC in the Mediterranean can feel very different from MSC in the Caribbean, and that's exactly what we'll explore in our next video. The biggest differences between MSC Mediterranean and Caribbean cruises. We'll look at the itineraries, ships, atmosphere, ports, sea days, and the overall experience, and help you decide which side of the Atlantic makes more sense for your next MSC cruise. So if you're planning an MSC vacation, watch that video next, and subscribe so you don't miss it. Happy cruising!